Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jen Wilson. I'm the Director of Programming and Advocacy with NEMA, New England Museum Association, and I'm joined by my colleague Heather Riggs. We're so happy to have you here today for our conversation for the environmental community of practice. And I'm going to head it right over to our facilitator, Paul Fenton.
Jen, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm excited to hear from this group today as well. So thanks for coming into the Zoom room this afternoon. So we're joined this afternoon from by members of both the Indigo Arts Alliance and the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens. I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then I'll let them kind of take it from here. So in 2023, Indigo Arts Alliance, a Black-led artist incubator space in Portland, Maine, launched a 3-year partnership with Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens in Boothbay, Maine, focused on environmental justice in urban and rural spaces to articulate why it is critical to center Black and Brown experiences and knowledge. Through multifaceted symposia events and permanent art commissions, they invited audiences to honor collective wisdom and forge new ways to be in harmony with the land now known as Maine and beyond. The first year's theme was Deconstructing the Boundaries, a future of land and food resilience, which brought attention to the many ways Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities have created spiritual, traditional, and cultural relationships to the land for millennia and continue to do so. For 2024 continuation, they launched Deconstructing the Boundaries, The Land Fights Back. Here today to speak about the program are 4 members of this partnership: Jordia Benjamin, the Executive Director of Indigo Arts Alliance; Ashley Page, Studio and Programs Manager for Indigo Arts Alliance; Gretchen Ostler, President and CEO for Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens; and Anna Hunt, Chief of Staff at Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens. Take it away, folks. I'm so excited. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Yes, thank you all for hosting and for being here. And I just want to call out to, I see Minu Amami joined, who is one of our artist alumni. So just want to say hello. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and I'll pass it on to Jordia, who will talk a little bit more about Indigo Arts Alliance.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am split on 2 different screens. So you'll hear my voice coming through Jordia Benjamin, but my face is also there with the tagline of Indigo Arts Alliance. But I'm the Executive Director of Indigo Arts Alliance, which was founded in 2018 and was launched in 2019. We are currently located in Portland, Maine on Wabanaki territory. And we are an arts incubator dedicated to the professional development and amplification of Black and Brown thought leadership, artistic vision, and practice. Our mission that you see on the screen here, but I'll read it to you and just to kind of sink it in. But our core value is really to build global connections by bringing together Black and Brown artists from diverse backgrounds to engage in their creative practice and processes while building lasting relationships, which is really rooted in co-mentorship. An aspect of our vision is to provide Maine-based artists of African descent access to a broader range of practicing Black and Brown artists of color from around the world. All of this beautiful work takes place in our Indigo Arts Alliance studio facility, which provides about 4,000 square feet of flexible studio space for artists across the globe. This location serves as a multidisciplinary art studio for established, mid-career, and emerging artists. We are intentional about the language in which we use, and thus I want to take a moment to define when I say Black and Brown and what it means to us, as you'll hear that term referred to a lot in this presentation. But when we're referring to Black, we're talking about the African diaspora. We are intentionally working with those who are displaced as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and the descendants of people from all African nations, African American, Afro, Latin, and the Caribbean. The term Brown refers to Native Americans, Latinx, Indigenous, and those living across the Indian Ocean world, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Pacific rims. We are really speaking to peoples that have experienced colonization and continue to experience colonization even today. The Artist in Residency program are at the heart of Indigo Arts Alliance and what we do. We offer two different residency models. The first being our founding program, which is the mentorship residency. Here we select artists for this program, and they spend 1 to 2 months in residence with us, depending on their origin. If they're international, 2 months; if they're national, 1 month, in residence with us to engage in their creative processes, develop and offer arts enrichment programs to serve our community and to deepen their relationship with our Black and Brown Maine-based, regional-based artists. We intentionally pair artists to cultivate rich conversations, collaboration, and exchange experiences, stories, knowledge, art, interest, industry, information, and technical skills. Throughout the residency, the paired artists have time to work independently as well. And the ultimate goal of this pairing is to build positive relationships that enhance and strengthen each artist as human beings, building, hopefully, lifelong relationships. We also ask our residents to participate in community building programs. So that can look like artist talks, studio workshops, and symposiums, which brings us here today. So we'll talk more about that. And all of our programming comes out of the relationships and the brilliance that our artists are bringing to the table. They're inspired by them and is deepening their work, but also expanding community knowledge about their practices and how they see the world in building a multiracial democracy. Our second residency is honoring the legacy of our elder mentor, David C. Driscoll. We launched this fellowship in 21, and the goal of this fellowship is to identify talented Maine-based artists whose work is of excellent artistic merit. It is open to all artists, all levels of their career, exclusively, again, for Maine-based or with artists with Maine roots. The fellowship offers 3 months of free studio rent along with a stipend, and an opportunity to really deepen and expand one's practice figuratively and literally. We strongly believe in building lineage and legacies via the transference of cultural knowledge. That is why mentoring in all aspects of the word is rooted in everything that we do in all formats of our residency programs. We salute mentoring as a dialogue between and among artists who share cultural histories and experiences. Both in our residencies are open to artists of all disciplines at any career stage. We look for artists who work interweaves between arts and social justice. And this is our 5th year. And from the very beginning of our inception and opening our doors, we will have hosted 66 artists coming directly from or are culturally rooted from 21 different countries by the end of this year. That was a lot. But moving on about our public engagement, which is another aspect in the arm of what we do. I believe now we're going to turn it over to our partners at CMBG, as Deconstructing the Boundaries was conceived in a few years ago, but initially launched publicly last year via symposium. And this just speaks to one ways in which Indigo creates relationship with other institutions and cultural organizations within our region, within our state, within nationally. That again provides an opportunity for Black and Brown artists' voices to be highlighted, their works to be centered, and their brilliance to be showcased. So with that, again, on this screen, we take partnerships extremely seriously. And we also we require criterias and routes to be explored with all of our partners' relationships. And so here are a few of our criteria in which our expectations of the whole, both of ourselves and our partners, accountable in the work that we're going to explore. And within the last 5 years, it just gives us a quick overview of the partners we have worked with throughout the years. And again, we're going to highlight on the larger logo on that slide, the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens.
Thanks,
Oh,
Jordia.
you're welcome. Thanks.
I am Gretchen Auster. I'm the president and CEO of Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, and I have been in this role since 2000. I started right in the heart of COVID. I would not recommend that to anyone. Hopefully none of you had an experience like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens and our background, and then speak a little bit to how we entered into this partnership and some of the ways that this partnership has really had a big impact on how we work and how we think organizationally. And then Anna's going to talk a little bit more about some of our process. So this is an aerial view of Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, and you can see we are on the coast. We're on a tidal river there. We have been open to the public since 2007. The organization was originally founded in 1992. We have kind of an interesting creation story in that most botanical gardens start either as the result of a bequest of a really wealthy individual who had a big property or estate, and then they turn it into a botanical garden, or they're connected to a university or a city or a town. And so because of that, they often have significant resources in which to both maintain their grounds and do their work. And Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens is in the most unlikely place down this peninsula on the coast of Maine, about an hour and a half from any of the major population centers in Maine, which is, a relative term anyway, because our biggest cities are smaller than some of the smaller cities down in Massachusetts and other places. And so we had 7 founders who were passionate gardeners, and they got together because they thought that we should have a botanical garden somewhere in mid-coast Maine. And so they worked for years to find the right spot, and they actually mortgaged their own homes in order to buy this property. And so we come from pretty humble beginnings, but we call it the People's Garden because everyone who's involved in this place really has this deep sense of ownership. And it was very much a kind of a startup mentality for a long time. Not so much anymore, but it was for a long time. And so this is just a bird's eye view to some of our cultivated gardens that you can see in our cafe. And it's actually looking right down on our children's garden right now. I think you can go to the next slide now, Ashley. So our mission is to inspire meaningful connections between people and nature and promote plant conservation through horticulture, education, and plant science. And so we have programming that supports all of those things. I like to think of it as the horticulture or the gardens are the vehicle through which we do all the other work. So we have educational programs that are about all sorts of things related to gardening, from kind of the most basic skills around gardening to, certificate programs for professionals in the field about how to, design with native plants, for example, and all sorts of other things. We have a big botanical arts certificate program as well. And then we have a growing plant science and research program and conservation program. So we're really focused on plant conservation in northern New England and not letting any plants go extinct in Maine first and then northern New England. I think we can go to the next slide. Over the past, I would say since I got here in 2020, and it started just before I got here with the murder of George Floyd and our staff team really wanting to get, like many organizations at that time, get more explicit about what our values are around inclusion, diversity, equity, access, uplifting different communities. And so we've done a lot of work over the past 4 years. We have a staff, we call it an IDEA committee. So inclusion, diversity, equity, and access is the acronym that we use. And one of the first things that we did was work on this statement and getting all of the different stakeholders in our community aligned about this statement. So this came from staff, but the board needed to support it and sign off on it. And Anna's going to talk a little bit more about our process of growth and learning, but I'm just going to read this because it speaks to some of why we are really so excited about our partnership with Indigo Arts Alliance. And so Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens is dedicated to being an inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible environment where every member of our community is valued, respected, and appreciated. We acknowledge that a society is stronger, more resilient, and more beautiful when it is diverse. We are committed to identifying and striving to eliminate barriers that historically have prevented the full participation of communities most impacted by inequity. You can go to the next slide, actually. So just a little bit about the gardens. We have about 325 acres. 54 of those acres are cultivated. We have about 3,500 plants in our living collections. So, you know, museums think about their collections, and for us, our collections are living and they're plants. We also have an herbarium that has collections there, and we have a library, and we have a sculpture collection as well. You can see a couple of those in this slide. I can't see the bottom of this, so I think that those are all the things I wanted to say about this slide and the gardens themselves. So the next slide. In terms of, you know, kind of who we are as an organization and what we're doing, we've got about 75 year-round staff. It grows to about 100 in the summer. I would say it would grow even more if we could hire all of the people that we need. We've really had challenges the past few years, especially with our food service and our custodial seasonal teams. We have 300, last year we had 316,000 visitors. We have about 9,500, 10,000 education participants in different kinds of programs. We offer hundreds of different programs, about 8,800 member households, and 200 volunteers that help us do all of this work, run all the programs. And we've grown really fast. So we can go to the next slide now, Ashley. So we have become the third most visited tourist destination in Maine in a relatively short time. We only opened to the public in 2007, and that happened in 2021 with both the kind of confluence of people discovering the outdoors during COVID. And we opened an exhibit by a Danish artist named Thomas Dambo, this giant trolls exhibit that got a lot of great press, and lots of people came to see the trolls. And so our attendance shot up, and it hasn't gone back down since then. So that also makes us the most visited and largest cultural institution in the state. We're recognized pretty regularly as, like, in the kind of greater garden world, as a garden worth traveling for. So we had got this really great honor last year of being one of the top 10 gardens worth traveling for in North America. And that was by a jury of our peers, which I found very meaningful. And then, you know, we have this great holiday light show, and we're always winning awards for that too. There's a USA Today one that we generally come in the top 3 for. And so I say all of this to say that we see a lot of people at the gardens. And so that's a tremendous opportunity, but we also see that as a big responsibility. We have an opportunity to change hearts and minds. And one of the interesting things about the gardens is that all kinds of people will come to the gardens. And you all probably know from the AMA materials and stuff, and some of the research that the AMA has done, that right now people trust cultural institutions more than they trust government, and definitely more than they trust media in terms of sharing knowledge, resources with them. And so, you know, that is one of the things that we take really seriously, and that we feel a real opportunity in this partnership with Indigo Arts Alliance in terms of exposing people to new ways of thinking, new kinds of art. And so we've been leaning into two things really in the work that we do. One is around creating belonging and making sure that everyone feels like the gardens are for them. And I think historically, botanical gardens, I mean, there's a pretty challenging history to them. They literally started as colonial institutions. Like you think about the ones in the UK, and they literally went out to other lands and extracted plants and brought them back and grew them. So we've been kind of grappling with that whole history, and this partnership has really both challenged us to continue to grapple and learn and focus on that historical legacy, and through our work with Indigo and some of the other partnerships that we've been building with different Wabanaki organizations as well, we've really reshaped the way we think, both about our origins and our purpose, but also how we work, so we really, in partnership, and I'm just going to say a few more things, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Anna. We've really learned to center our work in community and in relationships and in building relationships first, and listening and not being like pushing on what needs to happen, but really trying to let our partners lead and focus on sharing resources and knowing that we're going to make mistakes and try and be our authentic selves and have good intentions always, and understand that sometimes our impact won't match our intentions, and that it's really about creating the kind of relationships where we can speak authentically and candidly. And I feel like we've got that with our partners at Indigo Arts Alliance. And that came, we started the first public year of our partnership last year, but we started talking. I first started talking to one of the founders in 2020, who's actually a former colleague of mine and an old friend. And then our team started talking in 2021. So it was a number of years before we got to the point where we were, I think really before Indigo got to the point where they were ready to say, yes, we want to partner with you, and we see you doing the work that we would expect, and we see you showing up in the ways that we would expect in the world, and so I feel like we have become a much better and stronger organization from the partnership that we have with Indigo. Now I'm going to stop. Let you talk more, Anna.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anna Hunt, Chief of Staff at Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that work that the staff and board here at the Gardens has been doing. I arrived soon after Gretchen, so I've been here for about 4 years, and our IDEA committee, that Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access committee, had gotten off the ground, but it was still kind of in its early stages. And with Gretchen's leadership, we've incorporated a lot of different related trainings that have helped us for ourselves, but also helped us to have conversations with IAA to show that we were committed to having a partnership and doing the work that was needed to do so. And so as a staff, and then also our board of directors, we've done many workshops over the last 4 years on unconscious and implicit bias and colonization and accessibility and belonging and LGBTQ plus and gender issues. And we've been working a lot with an organization called Up With Community for many years. And Nico Chin has helped us to put together some project groups. These project work groups focused on different aspects of our work that would help us bring in these IDEA principles. And so things like accessibility and the guest experience, and philanthropy and giving, and the interpretation that we have in the gardens, our hiring practices, our programming. And so some of those have wrapped up their work. Some of those are still underway, but we've also, we have a few new building projects that are on the horizon. And so one of our newest things we've been doing is to work really closely with a Wabanaki advisory group. Some of our friends that Gretchen has actually spent a lot of time building trust with over the years, whether it's through this partnership with IAA or our partnership with Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness. But we've invited those folks to come in and help give us some advice on the design of new gardens and the design and feel of a new building project. And so that's in the early stages, but it's also work that feels pretty exciting. So one thing I really learned is that gaining trust in new partnerships definitely takes time. And so I feel like going into this third year with Indigo Arts Alliance, it feels like, all right, we have our rhythm. Although I have personally learned things after this year and after the first year that we always have things we can improve upon. And this partnership directly with IAA is, we are tasked with providing a space and resources for furthering their work and really stepping back and letting them lead the programming, which is different than any partnership that I've been involved in. I always thought sort of like, what am I supposed to be doing? How am I influencing this? And this is a very different way of thinking. And so it took me about the first year to kind of sink into that. And so now it's really nice to sort of know that our IAA colleagues are really working on the programming and the content, and I'm helping to work on the logistics and organization. And Ashley and I will talk a little bit further about that later on. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I was muted. My name is Ashley Page. I'm the Studio and Programs Manager at Indigo Arts Alliance, and I've also really had the pleasure of working very closely with Anna and the entire CMBG team on the amazing project that is Deconstructing the Boundaries. And so as Gretchen mentioned, this work really began in 2021 when we were approached by the gardens in the sort of long-lasting relationship between Gretchen and Marcia to curate a permanent public art piece for one of the many beautiful natural spaces that they cultivate and steward. And if you have not been, I highly recommend. There is a reason why that they are ranking so high in all of those national surveys. So as Jordia already sort of stated, our partners, we have a strong sort of moral guide, if you will, for our partners and the ways in which we choose and maintain partners within the organization. So as stated by our criteria, our partners must demonstrate an established commitment to supporting the community, public recognition, and internal accountability of ethical business practices, commitments to anti-racism, and creating opportunities to amplify the voices of Black and Brown artists and thought leaders. And so in the planning of this partnership, we really came into the middle of that process that Gretchen had mentioned, as the leadership team was recognizing perhaps some areas in which they had some growing to do. And so before Indigo agreed to that partnership, our teams really had quarterly check-ins in which we would sort of help determine, help guide, see what was needed, and really also see where the gardens were at in terms of that idea committee. And so once the gardens really demonstrated their commitment to this work and would report back on their progress, we reached an agreement and a place of real trust and understanding where we could collectively move forward with the planning stages. And so perhaps, Anna, you and I can speak about what that planning looks like in a very real practical way, knowing especially that this work started in 2021 and really did not launch or did not see the public eye until 2023. So here, there were many site visits, there were many team meetings. We've also had, I'm sure for the arts administrators on this call, lots of spreadsheets and Google Drive folders, documents, project proposals, but then also, sort of roles and responsibilities, really breaking out who's doing what where and really understanding the sort of dynamics within our own individual organizations to best utilize folks' skills, their talents, but then also where their areas of interest and passion and how they can best suit this kind of program. So Indigo, we were primarily sort of the curatorial leaders in this project. And the amazing and vast team at Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens really served as our hosts for the overall event.
I will say it's all about this beautiful spreadsheet in blue and black and white there on the left that Ashley and the IA teams put together. I mostly learned from Ashley in the first year what they were expecting and then how our spaces could help fill that need. And so, like Ashley said, through site visits and meetings and determining the capacity that we had and how many artist workshops we wanted to do, all the logistics that go into putting on a campus-wide scale event are the things that we did. And we keep it to just part of our campus, and we're open during that day also for regular guests in the gardens. But it's been pretty successful to have this over at our education center and then also in some of the surrounding garden outside areas in order to have people be able to connect for the panelists, also within smaller breakout spaces, and then also outside in community with their lunch altogether. So I think Ashley said most of it. And just wrapping up, we would spend some time debriefing at the end to make sure that we're taking any learnings from one year into the next. And so this year we actually did an in-person debrief, which was really useful just to sort of get back in the same space, in the same place together in order to make those recommendations.
Yeah, and I really want to just put a fine point on this sense of collaboration and trust within this partnership as well, and how that lead time was so beneficial. As you know, we weren't just sort of two individuals or just leadership planning this whole thing out. It was really an all hands on deck effort, from the programming team to the marketing team to the interns that both of our organizations host and have. It was really a whole organization-wide effort. And that's really, I think, a really special component of this overall program. So I'll give you guys a little insight into both years, and then we'll have some time for questions and just general conversation at the end. So really, with knowing that this is a 3-year program, we established these 3 guiding questions. How do you evolve your personal, communal, and institutional relationships with land ownership and stewardship? How do we address and heal the deep distrust that has taken root in Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities? And how do we acknowledge and appreciate the ways in which African, Brown, and Indigenous cultural systems and cultural and social systems, as well as spirituality, exist outside of settler colonial paradigms? So this is what we pose not only to our facilitators for these events, but also to ourselves, to the team, to our collective teams, and to our audiences overall. And so in our inaugural event, this was an all-day public symposia titled Deconstructing the Boundaries, a Future of Land and Food Resilience, where we invited 10 local and nationally based presenters to really hold space for us. And so this group really consisted of writers, artists, activists, community members, leaders, historians, etc. And so we started our day off with a panel conversation, which was an opportunity to share those perspectives from those brilliant thought leaders, and also just share on how Black and Brown communities have always held spiritual, traditional, and cultural relationships to the land. So these conversations, demonstrations, and interactive workshops that we facilitated throughout the gardens really prioritized Black and Brown and Indigenous experiences from multidisciplinary artists and beyond. And so we also offered a lunch that was created by a local African-American chef named Chef Lou of Black Betty's Bistro. And so we really wanted to center this idea of sharing a meal, because in so many ways, not only in Black, but also in Indigenous cultures, and in so many beyond, really food and the dining table is such a great equalizer. And there's so much to learn just from whoever you're sitting across the table from. So in addition to the lunch and the panel, we also held afternoon workshops that really activated the different spaces around the garden. So what Anna alluded to around the education center, and sort of what's named the timber frame, which is where our lunch was held. We also activated different spaces and gardens within their site. So not only, using more of their administrative spaces, but also really looking at some of the gardens and getting people back into the land, and really reconnecting in that way. And so with this first year's event, we also closed it out with a sort of round dance, and facilitated conversation that was led by Firefly and our moderator for that day, Carolyn Finney. And it was just such a beautiful opportunity to, one, ground us back into our Indigenous community that is here in the Northeastern region, the Wabanaki Confederacy, but also just to have a moment that we all recognize that we're here together, and also to get up and move. Something that was really important for us is just recognizing the sort of overall holistic nature of learning, and recognizing that it's not just something that you're reading or listening to, but it's also something that you engage your entire body in. So we wanted to make sure that we embedded at least some element of movement in that whole day as well. And I think, just to hearken on the idea that Anna had also mentioned around reflection and debriefing, one thing that was so important about the fact that this is a three-year program is the fact that we can grow upon it and learn, and also deepen the knowledge or the information that was shared from one year to another. And I think there is so much learning in that first year, and we know that impact was felt due to not only the quality of this year's program, Deconstructing the Boundaries, The Land Fights Back, but also in the attendance and overall reception of that program. We continue to get notes and feedback of its impact, and I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. But really, for this year, we built upon the momentum and conversation generated from 2023 to fuel this past year's program. And so really, we centered our Northeastern region United States Indigenous citizens, which are the Abenaki, the Maliseet, the Micmac, the Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy, which really collectively make up the Wabanaki Confederacy. And so really, as members of a global community, we are all people of this land. And so with the growing climate crisis and its reverberations in our societies, we bear witness to how the land fights back. And so with this particular program, we had 13 invited speakers and presenters, as well as a public art commission that focused on the environmental justice in urban and rural spaces and why it's critical that Black and Brown experiences be centered. And so again, we started our day off with a panel conversation, as well as a song, which was shared with us by one of our board members, Chris Newell, as well as another lunch, again, by Chef Lou of Black Betty's Bistro. And I want to highlight here as well, something that really stood out for this year was the public art commission of 2 public artworks by 2 Indigenous artists, Shane Pearly Dutcher and Anna Sukalarikis. Shane is a Woolastoq mixed media artist from the Tobique First Nation in New Brunswick. And Anna Sukalarikis is a citizen of the Navajo Nation in Muskogee Creek and Greek descent. And in addition to their work being commissioned at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, they also served as artists in residence here at Indigo during the month of July. And so the work that they created really took the course over the full year. We started these conversations in, I believe, November, December of 2023, right after our symposia, and then sort of let them inform this upcoming program as well. So this first work was created by Shane Pearly Dutcher, and it's an invitation to visitors to be immersed in the teachings, wisdoms, and environmental considerations of Indigenous communities of the Northeastern region. Created utilizing traditional basketry techniques, the woven copper baskets form fiddleheads, which are the furled fawns from a fledging fern. They are also a seasonal food for Maine's Indigenous population, and are a very important part of Wabanaki foodways and history. And then created by Anna Sukularakis, this is the Native Guide Project, which amplifies Indigenous understandings of place, identity, and narrative. Following the premise of previous iterations of the Native Guide Project done in cities such as Scottsdale, Arizona, St. Louis, Missouri, and Columbus, Ohio, Sukularakis focuses on the Indigenous presence of the area, and specifically here in Maine, the oyster shell heaps, also known as middens, which stand over 15 feet tall in various sites around the region. And so this art installation speaks to the ongoing legacy of Native peoples in this area. And so in order to best contextualize these artworks in the gardens, we also hosted a artist talk, as well as a private hour on the gardens for BIPOC communities to really be able to just be on the site and to spend time with the artwork, but also spend time with each other. And that was a real learning curve, I think, from our 2023 program, was just to embed more time and space for people to just enjoy the beautiful place that is the gardens. So again, we also hosted art workshops by members of the BIPOC community that are based here in Maine, but then also more regionally. And I really want to sort of go back to that point around impact. And so when we think about the impact of our work, I'd like to share a testimony from an attendee of our 2024 program, which is Indigo Arts Alliance has fostered creativity, connection, and collaboration within our community. Their dedication to empowering artists in the BIPOC community is incredible. Their collaborations with through collaborations with other organizations, they provide extraordinary opportunities for artists who might not otherwise receive visibility. They are truly building a community one artist at a time. And of course, this work would not be possible without the funders who make this work happen, as well as the incredible team also. So there's so much gratitude to be shared in, I think, every direction, as it is not without a lot of hard work to make something like this happen. And so we're currently in the process of planning for our public art commissions for 2025, as that will be the sort of conclusion of this partnership program that we've done together, which will again include a public art commission as well as another symposia. So we are sort of just coming off the high that was 2024, and we're going right back into the planning process for 2025. So thank you. And I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And hopefully we can spend a little bit of time answering questions and just being in maybe general conversation about the work and how we do it.
Any questions are welcome about anything. Spreadsheets or artists or, you know, big questions like how do you fund it all or
And folks can feel free to unmute themselves or drop it in the chat, whatever works best for you. We're flexible, we're open, and we're a nice small group today.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Jennifer Tafe. First, I just want to apologize for coming in a little bit late. I meant no disrespect. I just got caught up doing something else. But thank you for this talk and workshopping. I think the partnership and the product and the result is just fantastic, exciting. Doing all the great things and all the great work. And I find it all very, very exciting. I'm wondering just from the group, you know, as someone who's just trying to get started in fostering these kinds of partnerships. I work at Mass Audubon. I'm the director of the Museum of American Bird Art, which is used to be located in Canton. We're building a new museum right now, but traditionally, historically, our programming, I think, before my arrival has been quite traditional in scope, and I'm really interested in forging these kinds of relationships. But I'm only one person, and the support is a little bit don't have as much support here, just in terms of, staff. And so I would love to hear how, what kind of advice you all might have for those of us who are just kind of getting started in a situation where, none of these kinds of relationships exist. And those of us who are really excited about starting these kinds of partnerships, and where do we begin?
I have ideas, but I'm happy to let someone else go first. Shall I start and then you all can build on it? Okay. I really appreciate that question, Jennifer. I think probably lots of people have it. We were lucky in that Marcia and I were former colleagues and old friends. And so like we already had a relationship, but you're right that it starts with the relationships, and one of the things that I've really come to believe in any kind of deep partnership like the one that we have with Indigo Arts Alliance, but really any kind of work where you're trying to move maybe non-traditional in your field ways of thinking and like public programs or partnerships forward, is that you've got to move at the speed of trust, right? So again, it goes back to the relationships. And for us in some of the other relationships, like we were really clear that we wanted to build strong relationships with partners from the various Wabanaki tribes in the Confederacy also, especially being an organization that is, centered on land and caring for land that was unceded. And, that's complicated too. And so we asked a lot of the people in our network who had whether they were supporters or board members, partners that we did have, staff even, who should we be talking to and who should we get to know? And we just started just building a list of names and then reaching out and trying to get that first meeting. And I think myself and one of my other team members, the two of us sent lots of emails that were not answered for a while, and then after a while, we started building small relationships, and maybe because of that and because we were showing up and people were maybe talking about us, then other people would start responding to us when we sent the second or the third or the fifth email. So it's slow going too, and you don't take it personally if people don't respond. And then the other thing is to be really smart about what kind of partnerships make sense for your organization and that are going to help both uplift who you're partnering with and their mission and their work and yours, right? And that I know we have lots of board members who feel like, oh, you should partner with this local organization that's right around the corner. And I'm good friends with that director, and we're both like, yeah, we'll partner together someday, but there's nothing right now that makes sense that's worth using our organizational resources for. Like we both have a lot of other things going on. And so that's the other thing I would say. And Jordia, Ashley, Anna, other thoughts? Or anyone else on the call?
Oh, yeah. No, I have things. Thank you, Gretchen, for opening that up. Anytime you're starting new relationships or partnerships, I want you not to separate how you would build relationship personally with a friend or if you are courting someone. It's the same thing. We're all people, and we need to start with that. We need to lead there. So I'm thinking that just showing up, if you're interested in working with a particular organization, you show up to their programs, introduce yourself, be supportive in the work. And also when for nonprofits like ourselves, we are extremely small in size. It's Ashley and myself that are the two full-time employees here, and we have a few part-time staff and contractors. So you are working with a very small but very mighty team. So when you approach small organizations like ourselves and say, let's partner, we're like, oh gosh, that's another layer of work. So you also have to know your own capacity within your own organization. What are you coming with? Are you coming with additional support, or you are asking another organization to add on labor and work to their already taxing programming schedule, right? So it's more of approaching how can you benefit and help amplify and support the work of that existing organization versus what can this organization do for me? And if you start there with genuine conversations, I'm sure there will be alignments that you both can find an opportunity to elevate upon. The reason why we were really interested in working with the gardens, and we haven't stated yet, was that we had submitted a proposal already for a large grant that we did not get, that was centering Black and Indigenous relationships with the land. And so we had already had this idea in the back of our head that we wanted to do this work, and the avenue in which we were pursuing did not pan out for us. And so when we started discussions with the gardens, that work was already created. And so we knew we had additional, things and collaborations, and we want, and just leadership, and just also a temperature check from the gardens that in our partnership criteria, we just were interested in just like, where are you at? And so to that, another note for you to just kind of check where you are as an organization is to know if you have support within doing that collaborative work. How's your board feeling? How's your advisory circle, if you have any? How's your leadership in your staff? Do you have additional support within your team that can help lend to what a potential partnership or funding even dedicated to a partnership? So there are so many kind of like internal checklists, and knowing that this relationship won't start overnight. The gardens knew that we weren't going to come up with a program and start running the next day. So also understand this might be years in the work. And this has been years in the work for us. So I said, just build in that growing and learning and embracing the journey that you're going to be on with another organization as well.
Thank you so much.
Of course, good luck.
Just have a few more minutes together this afternoon, but if there are any other questions, I can ask the question, but I'll wait for other folks to chime in. Please feel free to unmute or throw in the chat. My teacher tolerance for wait time is very high, but I'll ask my question, which is sort of a follow-up on what Jennifer asked. You both kind of touched on this. There's the building relationships, right? Kind of first and foremost. I think that's critical. There's obviously like trying to tap into your existing networks and reaching out to folks you already know. I have some experience doing this, but I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about sending those cold emails, especially because like I've struggled with the like, I want to get to know you, I want to hang out with you, but I don't want to waste your time, and what like, how do you think about like crafting those, especially if you are the one coming from like maybe the more resourced organization, if you have any like thoughts about how to write that cold email.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this first, Jordia, or Ashley.
I mean, I'll say something and then I'll let Ashley speak, as we both send cold emails out into the world ourselves, even as a smaller organization. Our cold emails usually go out to when we're looking to engage new participants or facilitators, workshop leaders. And I'll say in particularly to the symposium that we're crafting with CMBG, with the garden, excuse me. One, we're pretty persistent. Two, we use several means of communication. So you didn't answer email, we'll find you on IG. We'll also DM you. We'll find you on Facebook. We'll find you on LinkedIn. You will know that we're trying to get in contact with you. If none of those initial acts work, we're asking our network if someone knows that particular individual or someone in that organization. And we're like, could you now make an introduction? And a lot of the folks that we engage with are coming from networks. So within our networks and their networks. So there is a very close line or a link to them. But when we are completely shooting in the dark, we are utilizing all forms of touch points and messaging. And then I think what we find too is, the power of social media has also been really great. We utilize folks' website as well. And sometimes their emails are listed there. And we always open up with like an introduction to who we are. We include some links to past works that we have done, videos to past partnerships that can be of a resource. So you can kind of we provide the homework right there. So they don't have to do their own research or do too much work outside of an email. Everything is kind of compact right there at their fingertips. And then usually we hear things fairly quickly, or there are some instances where there can be weeks that go by, but then we just ramped up our persistence and consistency in reaching out, because we know, and I could speak for myself, my email is horrendous. So I have just put to my caption in my signature, if you do not hear from me in 48 hours, you need to resend your email because it got lost. I don't know, it's buried somewhere. So I could just imagine other folks' emails as well. So I take that in consideration. It's not as if they're not trying to get in contact with you, but things can be flooded. So you utilize different source of reach. So I hope that helps, but don't be discouraged in sending any form of communication and reaching out to folks on various platforms, as something is going to hit their face.
Yeah, and I actually will add to that, because I'm usually the one who's sort of like doing a lot of this outreach in addition to Jordia, especially on the Indigo side. And I find that a lot of the cold calls that we do, or cold emails that we do, I really try to let our work speak for itself first, introduce myself, try to give all of that background. And then I also have no shame if it's a paid opportunity. I'm like, by the way, this is something. And so, and that typically also will help bolster that response immediacy. So I'm really transparent about those sorts of things. And also, so just recognizing something that Gretchen said, where you just sometimes have to work at the pace of trust. And also knowing that, especially for us, we're typically working with Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, all of which are or most of which I would say are very inundated with a lot of asks, especially when it's a small organization or an artist who is, ramping up in terms of their career. And so you kind of just never know what's going on in their personal life. Or in their professional life. And so we, in that sort of consistency and persistence, sometimes, we're also like, maybe now's not the right time, but perhaps overall, and maybe next year we can circle back. And even in the sort of initial sort of introductory conversations, when we do get a response, when we do get that, have that conversation, and, they don't always go anywhere. But we do, and we're very intentional about how we build and maintain connections. And so I think that's also something that's been so lovely about this particular partnership with Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens is that typically so many of these events and programs that we do are one time only, and they're massive efforts, and they're, you know, the budgets go, you know, that's a whole other conversation, but to really be able to continue to build on some of these things and then also have those networks start to, you know, bleed out into communities of their own. So even in the case of our participants, some of those participants from 2023 informed who we should be working with in 2024, and et cetera, and et cetera. So I say all of that to say that it is, yeah, sometimes you just have to go at the pace that the work will allow you.
And Jennifer, you're going to be joining us in Newport. So you're going to meet all your close friends, all 800 of them next month.
This was fantastic. We are at about time. Thanks so much to our presenters. This was fantastic. And thank you for the folks that joined us. 2 quick pieces of housekeeping. I'm going to throw a quick feedback survey into the chat. Please take just 2 seconds to fill that out if you can. And we will not be meeting next month because we will all be at conference together. So I look forward to seeing those of you who will be there in Newport. Any last words from our NEMA staff?
Oh, I was gonna say, Paul, that's a nice segue because I was gonna do a little conference plug, so thank you. So I'm pulling up my app. We are 33 days out from conference, so we're just about a month. And I just want to plug that tomorrow is the end of our early bird registration. So if you are interested in attending conference and want to save a little bit of money, that's a great opportunity. So we definitely encourage you to sign up. And if you have signed up and you're looking for a hotel, we're trying to do the overflow. We're getting there, just a heads up. If you can't register by tomorrow, registration closes on October 18th. And it's going to be a huge conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of passion and enthusiasm for Newport, and we're going to have some great conversations. So we look forward to seeing you there with, as Heather said, at least 800 of our closest friends. So if not more. So thanks so much, everybody. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
guys.
afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
This was
Bye,
great.
everybody.
Take care. Thanks. Good luck, everyone.